Hi there, this is Andrea Mowry of Andrea Renee Knits, and this is I'll Knit If I Want To. I pop on here every week to answer some of your questions in regards to knitting and other fibery things. And I'm just jumping right in because I just looked at my iPad, which is where I read all the questions off of, and it's almost out of battery. So I was like, I just gotta hop to it. So I will save my show and tell, including what I'm wearing, for the end, when I don't need to be able to read questions anymore. All right, let's jump right in. This is a really random and probably basic question. I am knitting your Inclinations Cowl. I'm also a big Lifeline fan, but I put one in after a row 4 repeat in section 1, and for the first time in my life, it failed me. The Lifeline failed. For some reason, I found it impossible to pick up what I think must have been the knit one through the back stitches from row 3. The stitches had fallen all the way down in the lifeline, so I had to try to fish them back up again through the correct loops. When I say it failed, I probably could have got them all back up, but it was taking a few minutes per stitch, which was absolutely soul destroying. I had only done 7 of the full repeats, so I just frogged it. What I wanted to ask is whether there would be a better row to put my lifeline in. It would either have to be the row where we knit one below or the return knit row. I usually put my lifelines in on a plain knit row, but do you think it would be better doing it on the knit one below row? Thank you for considering. This is a great question. So little two-parter. So I'm just gonna keep fiddling with my cowl, get my twist just how I like it. I'm really overdressed for this sunny spring day. So my first question is actually, what was your lifeline made of? But I would put it in the knit rows and the plain knit rows. If that is an option, that is always what I do because I think it's the easiest to drop down to. So I definitely would do it in the knit rows, not the ones that you've already put your little knit one below so that, you know, you have those double stitches. So I think the plain knit row is the easiest. But what I'm wondering is, did you by any chance use dental floss or a really fine lifeline? So I have had something similar happen to me, and it's when I use dental floss. And dental floss can be stretchy. It's not a stable substance, I guess I'm going to call it. So I did that once on a pair of worsted weight slippers I was knitting, and especially the worsted weight yarn compared to that unstable dental floss, it stretched. So all my stitches began to like sink with the lifeline in it and kind of like ladder down like that. And it was really stressful. So I always use embroidery floss now, which is strong and smooth. It's really inexpensive. And I like that you can divide it into however many plies you want. So if you're using like lace or fingering weight yarn, you could just use a single ply of your embroidery floss. But if you're using worsted weight yarn, you could just keep the embroidery floss as it comes with usually like 6 plies or something. So that's the other thing I would consider is I wonder if your lifeline material was the issue and it sank into your knitting, making it harder to pull those stitches up. Because realistically, the whole point of that lifeline is to create a barrier so that the stitches can't fall. And so you should be able to like pull them up and have them stay as those loops, like as though your needle was still in it. So using a strong enough lifeline material that has absolutely no stretch in it and sticking with the knit rows when possible. Next question. Do you have any tips on avoiding that little gap created by the stretched stitch after a cable? Not sure if it only happens to me. It doesn't. And it's not that noticeable, but it drives me crazy. Also, if you're not cabling without a needle, which I prefer to unless it's a big braid, would you mind sharing which tool you use? I've been using a DPN, but I'd be happy to invest in something more suitable. So I wonder if I have my little notions pouch in here. I do generally cable without a needle. I always lose my needle. I put it in weird places and can't find it, or I stick it on my top lip. And that's the only way I don't lose it. Do I not have my cable needle in here? Oh my goodness. Oh, here it is. So I just use this little guy, which is from Lantern Moon, I think. I got it when I was like 18. had it forever. So it's just a little tiny wooden, it's got these little pretty lines etched into it. And it has served me well. There's all kinds out there. I don't think you have to get anything special. Sometimes it can be fun. This can be a fun thing to pick up at a yarn festival or like different kind of knitting events like that, when you maybe want to get a little souvenir, but you don't need any more stash enhancement and things like that. Sometimes a really beautiful little notion can be a fun thing to pick up. Something kind of special. So I've had this one forever. I really like it. It's little, and I literally, that's how I store my cable needle when I am cabling. Although I'm like, maybe I just need to always wear a hat so I can kind of like shove it in my hat, pull down and use. But otherwise I sit next to me and I lose it. So that's why I like to cable without a needle. But in regards to that gap, the real question at play here is, yes, you can do something that is what combination knitters do. And this is a tip I've given for if you have kind of wonky ribbing where one leg of your ribbing kind of kicks out and just doesn't look really even. Basically, the issue when you're cabling is you've crossed all these stitches over, which is already kind of pulling on the yarn. And then generally when we're cabling, we are knitting our cable stitches, right? But next to our cable, we generally have purls. And that's like our background fabric. So we already have kind of like the stretching going on and our yarn's in back because we've been knitting, and now we have to bring it in front. And when we purl, generally speaking, we use more yarn than when we knit. They actually aren't perfectly even. So one way to combat that, to minimize that gap, is to purl using less yarn. And the way you do that is you wrap the opposite way you usually would. So when we purl, we usually, most of us, except for combination knitters, but standard knitting, you would wrap your yarn over the top of the needle to purl. For after your cables, wrap the yarn under to purl. And what you're going to see is it'll still create your purl stitch. It'll just have a little twist in it, but it uses less yarn. And then next time you come across that stitch, you'll just need to work it through the back loop and that'll untwist it for you. But that should help minimize those gaps. And also just something to consider, blocking can really help with some of those little things that we maybe notice a lot of while we're knitting a project and we're really zeroed in on what we're doing. But a lot of times then once we give our knit a bath and it gets a chance to just relax, some of that yarn shifts around and it also blooms, and that helps kind of fill in little spots like that. So to kind of remind yourself of that as well when you're working on your project. And I am going to do a combination knitting tutorial. I need to put that on my list. I keep saying it and I need to do it. Okay. Question number 3. I am trying to embrace some sweater knitting. At some point, I have to stop knitting your shifts and cowls. Well, I'm happy you're enjoying them. I am currently working on the DRK Everyday Sweater. The top-down construction and less seaming appeals to my more knitting, less finishing mentality. I have a question about the Barber cord accessories. I've heard you mention them and I picked up a pair while visiting Portland at Knitwit. Yay! Anyway, I was attempting to put all the stitches onto the cords and it kept coming disconnected from my needle tip and stitches were flying into nowhere man's land. The stress! Was I supposed to buy these in sizes? I am using an 8 needle. I love the idea of using these, but now I am very wary. Any tips? So, you don't buy them in sizes. They just come in one size. Let's see if I have mine in my bag. And the trick is really shoving them on there. You want to get a good suction going. And then, even with that suction, there's nothing securing them on besides suction. So don't just quickly try to get all of your stitches right onto the Barber cord. So this is what we're talking about. These are these little, it's like I got to get my face out of there for my camera. By the way, somebody asked what camera I used. It's just my phone. So nothing fancy. I'm low tech over here. Okay, so here is the Barber cord, which again just comes in this one size. It has a little hole in the end. So you just pop it on to the needle tip. and then it is gonna suction on. And I really push it on there as far as I can. These are, I'm using a size 6 needle, I think. And then I would do a little tug test. Boop. And do you see how it's staying on? And then I just start pushing. And I gently, I really want it to stop trying to focus on me. I just gently then bring my stitches onto the cord, like that. And then when you're ready to put them back onto your needle, I just hold it. And again, basically it's when it's going over the cord and onto the needle tip that I just want to take care to not pull anything too quickly. And then you boop, pull it off. So yeah, just do a suction test and just be gentle with it. Don't like them super fast. Just kind of help them along. Depending on what yarn you're using and your needles, sometimes it's a little quicker than other times. They're gonna glide over metal needles a little quicker than maybe wood needles. And if it's a thicker yarn or a sticky yarn or a smooth, soft yarn, that all can affect it. But as long as you don't try and do it too fast, and it's still, I think, way quicker than trying to put it onto a Lifeline with like a tapestry needle. I'm gonna talk more about this later too. All right, so I hope that helps. Don't give up on them. Maybe just slow down a little and make sure you got a good securing on there. Good suction, that's the word I wanted. Okay, next question. Hi, Andrea. I love, love, love that brimmed Harlow hat made from your hand spun that you wore in episode 115. Thank you. I think I still have it right over here. This one. I was wondering how you achieved that consistent self-striping repeat. Do you spin the yarn first, then dye it to self-stripe in that way? Or do you use dyed fleece? Or did you attach the different colorways of yarn to achieve the striping? The color combination is very striking. Well, thank you. I can't take any credit. I did spin the yarn, but that beautiful color application is all thanks to Nest Fiber, who dyed the braid I spun from. So this was just from a single braid of fiber. I wonder, can I show it on here? While I chat, I'm gonna see if I can't bring it up on my iPad to show you what the braid looked like. So, can I talk and look for something? Oh, my iPad just froze. Hold on. So, this is actually one of the least prep spins I have done. I had gotten a little travel wheel and I really wanted to try spinning thicker and try out my little travel wheel. And so it was really just an experiment spin. And I just did a 2-ply and spun it as thick as I could. I think all I did was probably stripped the yarn vertically once. I'm going to read my little note here. Oh, I lied. I divided it vertically 6 times. And then I spun each of those 6. So I did split that then 3 and 3. So I had 3 vertical strips of the braid. And again, so if you think about the braid, here's what it looks like. If I was real tech savvy, it would like pop up like boop right here. But this is what the braid looked like undyed. And so when that's all straightened out, you'll get like a section of like the blue and then the lavender, gold, poppy, and then back to like the orangey yellow, back to the blue, back to the lavender, kind of like that through the repeats. So what I did is I had that big long braid all unbraided and straightened out, and I just stripped it down 6 times the whole length. And then I spun 3 of those strips to each bobbin, and then I plied it together for a 2-ply yarn. And this is just what it did. I did not plan for it. That is all just what happened. I was surprised how well. So this is a standard 2-ply. It's not a fractal spin. So there's not as much barber pulling. There is some barber pulling that happens because I wasn't trying to perfectly keep those colors separate. If I wanted it to really be a self-striping yarn without any blending between the colors, then I would probably want to do a chain ply instead of a traditional like 2 or 3 ply yarn. But I just spun it. So half to each bobbin. And those are the beautiful little stripes that occurred. And I would love if Nest Fiber did this colorway again, because I do think it's such a beautiful colorway. Such unexpected color combos. There's something about the lavender and the poppy in there that are just so fun. So anyways, that is all I did. Here's a picture of the yarn before it was knit up. It's one of my favorite yarns I've spun. All right. Back to the questions. All right. I plan to knit Straya for your March to May knit along, and I'm wondering about adding pockets. Will it be too challenging with the half fisherman's rib stitch, or maybe just won't look good? I am knitting a sweater for my granddaughter where you stop and knit a strip for the pocket and then fold it in half and pick up the live stitches on the next row on the way back. You then need to sew up the sides. Maybe that would work. Thank you for your input. I won't be too sad if the pockets are not the best idea for that sweater. So what I would do is I'll give you 2 options. One, I would just do patch pockets. That way, if you decide you don't like them, you don't have to keep them. But for the patch pocket, I would just go ahead and work them in half fisherman's rib, maybe again like the size of a swatch, like a 4x4 inch, maybe even matching your stripes so that they can line up with the sweater with just a plain ribbing top, just like you do on the hems and edges of the sweater. And then you would just sew those onto the front. You could even just do 1, you could do 2, but that's nice because you don't have to make any decisions beforehand. You can just go, okay, I think I want to try adding some pockets to this. So I love patch pockets for that reason. My other favorite style of pocket is actually called an afterthought pocket, even though we are definitely giving it some forethought, because for this method, what I like to do is I like to knit up to 1 inch below where I want the top of the pocket. So that might be 6 inches up from the cast on edge. And then I would knit in a piece of waste yarn. And after you're all done with your sweater, so you would knit it for the width of the pocket. And if you just search afterthought pocket, you'll find lots of information. This is just a quick little sum up of what you do. But you would decide how wide you want your pocket. So you would do that many stitches with your waste yarn, and you would knit across it. And then you would slip all those stitches back and then knit across with your working yarn again, and then just keep going in pattern. And you would do that on both sides if you want 2 pockets. Now, when you're all done with the body of your cardigan, you'd go back to where you put that waste yarn, and you take the waste yarn out and put your needles back in. The live stitches that are on the bottom of where that waste yarn was, you just knit a little ribbed top to your pocket and bind it off and sew the little, 1 inch sides. And then the live stitches that had been on top of where that waste yarn was, that's going to be your pocket liner. So you just knit down just in stockinette until it's the depth you want your pocket, and then bind it off. So you'll have like a square flap, kind of similar to what you had described. So you'd have this square flap that falls to the inside of the pocket, and then you would just sew that to the inside of your sweater. So I love that method a lot. If I do that method, I actually have a special way I put in the waste yarn using a Lifeline. It just makes it way easier to get those stitches back on your needle after the fact. So if you're interested in that, then you would want to watch my tutorial for an afterthought heel. Is the same idea. And I'm going to put that link in for you while I'm thinking about it. I'm trying to see if this updated. I don't think it did. Oh, here we go. Yay. All right, so I'm going to put this in. So it's going to say afterthought heel, but it's the same idea. Afterthought heel tutorial. All right. Woo! We got all the questions without this dying. And we're only like 19 minutes in. So now we can do a little show and tell. So we just finished up the spring knit along hat challenge, and we made the old port hat, crazy hair underneath. So here is mine. I don't usually get to knit along with y'all during these little knit along challenges because, you know, work, life. But I really wanted another one of these, hence why I made it the hat for the knit along. And I'm just so tickled. It was so fun. I love how it turned out. Here's my little brim liner on the inside. And it's so soft and cozy. So there's my old port hat. And then on top of that, today I am wearing the Embrace cowl. So this cowl is, I actually designed last year, and it was for Ching Fiber's advent calendar. So only the people who had signed up for the advent calendar got the pattern. But now it's available to everybody. So you can find it on Revelry. You can find it in my web shop on my website, andrearenaeknits.com. But it's really exciting to finally have this one out into the world. It's a little like infinity or Mobius style cowl. And it is garter stitch with these slip stitches and then a marled fade. I used 12 colors in like a mini skein fade set that they actually dyed for this, but it also would be a fabulous stash buster where you could go through. I tell you how much you need by weight in the pattern as well as yardage. But so if you have a little kitchen scale, you could find little odds and ends balls of yarn in your stash and weigh them out. And if you have enough of each color, pick out 12 colors and try and create a little fade, and you could totally stash bust. I also think it would be beautiful and really like classic, elegant wardrobe staple in one color. So again, I marled yarns. I think it would be so lovely in like a sport weight yarn held with something fuzzy, and even just in like a soft gray, like one of those really classic. I mean, I do everything usually with a lot of color, but I do think it would be like one of those really pretty modern little wardrobe staples. It also comes in 3 sizes. We wanted to make it for the whole family. So there is a toddler, a youth, and an adult size. This is the adult one that I am wearing. And I love it too because it's one of those things that is easy to style. I like to play with it. I just kind of like the twist in front, but you can wear it wherever. I also sometimes like to arrange like how much of that fade do I want to have showing. But it's also great for non-knitters who maybe aren't used to wearing knits, like a shawl or something like that, which can be kind of tricky to style for some people. So it's just such an easy thing to pop on, especially in the blustery, chilly months. So it's great for gift knitting. And I'm just on a cowl kick this year, apparently. I'm like, I should probably knit some other accessories. I've just been going strong on these cowls. But they're so satisfying, and they don't use a ton of yardage, and they're easy to wear. I wear them all the time. So, oh, I also said I would share what was on my needles. So the DRK Spin It to Knit Along, DRK Spin It to Knit It, Knit Along, is winding down to an end this month. I can't believe it. We just finished up the Spring Knit Along Challenge and the 3-month-long March to May Knit Along Challenge, which were both so fun and amazing. And now we're almost to the end of the year-long Weekender Spin Along Knit Along. So if you've been following along here, you know that I went on quite the journey trying to figure out what yarn I wanted to use for mine. I have spun up a lot of different yarns and I keep changing my mind. And you're gonna laugh because I did my bats with all the speckles, like the Tweety one I did, which I love. But then at the last minute, I think I've shown y'all before, I have this CVM, which is from a farm back in Michigan, that I spun up, and it is one of my most favorite spins I've ever done. I mean, don't get me wrong, spinning just like an off-white yarn for a year, some would consider a little tedious, but it turned out so well that I'm just love it. So it went into my precious place where I was like, oh, I can't use it because I love it and I can't ever respin it the same, you know? I could try, but oh. So anyways, I finally decided, you know, that yarn deserves its time in the sun. So anyways, here is my hand spun weekender on the needles using my Michigan CVM. So I'm super excited. I'm also going to make a few little modifications. And by few and little, I mean a number of them and maybe not so little, but I'm really excited about it, and we'll see how it turns out. I'll show y'all along the way and maybe write it up if it turns out well. So I'm really excited to be working on this. It's a really nice, I just love knitting with my hand spun. There's nothing else quite like it. So speaking of hand spun, I have this sitting right here and almost forgot to show you. I finished my hand spun DRK everyday. So this is my DRK everyday cowl that I knit out of my hand spun. Oh my gosh, just making a mess. It's hard with a hat on. So this one I actually kind of like to fold it down so that it's a little more jaunty around my neck. But this is using, it was a one-of-a-kind colorway from Hello Yarn that I love so much, and I'm finally done with it. I cast this on in Mexico during the retreat with Farmer Starter Fibers and Ritual Dyes, and I love it so much. And I have a decent amount of yarn left. I have like half my skein left and one whole other skein. So I don't know what else I'm gonna knit. Maybe a Harlow and some matching mitts. I mean, I'm not very matchy-matchy, but when in Rome. All right, so there is all of my many new knits to show you. I can't believe I have like multiple, well, I guess these are the only two that I finished this week. But still very exciting. So feels good to get some things off my needles and to finish some things. I hope that y'all maybe finish some whips this weekend or have some other making you get to spend time doing, even if it's just memories with the people you love. And I hope to see you back here next week. As always, all the links to all the things are down below. DRK Everyday Cowl, Old Port hat. I'll even throw one in for the Harlow hat and the Embrace Cowl if you're curious about any of those. And the links to the weekend or knit along are down there if you just want to go have a peek or if you're participating. And I guess that's all. I hope to see you back here next week. Bye.